This is something I discovered several years ago in my own study. I've asked people like you many times, if you study the prophetic types, the sanctuary times and feasts and types, Jesus is supposed to come in the spring of the year. And if you study, Jesus is supposed to come in the fall of the year. So I've asked people, maybe you, is Jesus coming in the spring or the fall of the year? And the answer is yes. Now, how is that possible? It's just this possible. The earth is tilted 23.5 degrees. This is spring. This is fall. This is fall. This is spring. All you have to do is this. All you got to do is put the wobble on. And you can go from fall to spring or spring to fall just like that. That's all you have to do. All right? Now, I truly believe Jesus will come in the spring, fall of the year. The question is, which comes first? The spring feasts or the fall feasts at the end? Well, we said if we start at Passover and Pentecost, then it's got to end in the fall of the year. So this is what I'm asking you to see. And in Exodus and the sanctuary times and so forth, we have the first month, and this is the first day of the first month of the year unto you. All right? And then on the 10th day, first day, 10 days, choose a lamb. Reserve this lamb to be offered. On the 14th day, Passover, what happens next? Seven days of what? Unleavened bread. So we have 1 to 10. We've got 10 to 14. And then we have 7 days. Okay? I'm sorry, 2 weeks what?
2 weeks and then 1 week.
Oh yes, yes. Now watch. Let's go to the fall calendar. This is I did it backwards. No, I didn't. It's the first day of the 7th month. Which feast is that? Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah. What's Rosh Hashanah? The New Year. What happens on the 10th day of the 7th month? Yom Kippur. The trumpets are here. But you have to be very careful, because the trumpets are not all done here. The 7th trumpet is when Jesus comes. So there's a moment when the trumpets begin, but at strategic times in these measured days, you have the 5th trumpet, the 6th trumpet, the 7th trumpet.
Is that the way they did it originally?
I'm not sure. Saying, uh-oh. So what follows here? What follows? Feast of Tabernacles. How many days in the Feast of Tabernacles? 8, but that's inclusive. That's Sabbath till Sabbath again. All right? you have to look at this and say, one is not far removed from the other, or vice versa. There's too much going on here that says some of these things are lining up, but there's a small variation in them. Well, there could be a small variation because there's 3.5 days over here. And that half day has got to be accounted for somewhere in all of this. Somewhere. Now the question is, did you see that I changed the abomination that makes desolation to the expression close of probationary time? That's the same thing as in the midst of the week He will cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. There's no more mercy. Christ has stepped out. He's no longer high priest. He's no longer high priest. He is the judgment. Absolutely. Judgment is... And you can check this out in Revelation. They began to sing, "You are worthy, O Lord, because Thou hast taken to Thee Thy great power and hast reigned." And then it follows judgment, 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 judgment. So what I'm looking at here are the possibilities of getting from here to here. Meaning we've got 3.5 days, and maybe we have 10, and maybe we have 5, and maybe we have 8. So 10, 5, and 8 is how many days? 23 days. But if you get back into Exodus, you will find that they left at midnight on the 14th day. They left at midnight on the 14th day. And they had traveled just so far, and there was a second Passover. What was the second Passover granted for? Come on. The Bible says there are 2 reasons why a person may be absent, may find it necessary to be absent at the first Passover. What are those 2 reasons? What? If you are subjected to or in the presence of uncleanness, and if you find it necessary to make a trip, take a journey. All right? So listen to Jesus, who's talking about Michael standing up. "When you therefore shall see the abomination that makes desolate, the unclean thing." It's actually translated in some versions as the unclean thing. That's what the word abomination means. All right? So you are suddenly in the presence of the unclean thing. And Jesus said, whoever is in Jerusalem at this time, don't even go back to your house to pack up your belongings. Get out of town. That's a necessary journey. Okay? So I cannot help but look at all of this and say it has something to do with what's going on here. Now, if these numbers are somehow going to jive and sense is going to come out of all of this, let me tell you where it takes me. I don't have the numbers exactly lined up yet the way that would please me, but let me tell you where this takes me. When Jesus shouts, it is the 7th trumpet. That's Bible. That's Revelation. That's Thessalonians. When the archangel blasts the trumpet and shouts. Now that's when the saints, the sleeping saints, are awakened and resurrected by the shout of His voice. Okay? What happens the moment they hear His voice? Tell me what happens. It says, and they will awaken and come forth from their dusty beds, their graves, they come. And Paul says, they are changed in a moment from glory unto glory. All right? Does that sound anything at all like Pentecost to you? Tell me what Pentecost is all about.
Holy Spirit.
What?
Coming of the Spirit.
Well, let's do it again. John is down by the Jordan and he's preaching to the people, and he said, I've been telling you there's one coming, and here he comes. This is the one I was telling you about. I told you that the one coming after me is worthy, and I am not worthy to even bend over and tie his sandals. See? And so Jesus says to him, John, I want you to baptize me. Now what does John say? Same thing Peter said when Jesus knelt down to wash his feet. Oh, no, you got the wrong guy here. You got things out of order here. No. John said exactly the same thing Peter said. No way. Jesus said to John, who was his cousin, by the way, he said to John, it behooveth us. In other words, there is a very important time, an event that has come together right here, right now. You and I have been brought together. When did John and Jesus meet one another before this? In the womb. Did they recognize one another? Yes. Yeah, John did. He was in the womb long enough that the babe leapt in my womb, Elizabeth said. All right. Now, they never laid eyes on one another before this. And here comes Jesus, and John recognizes him. Not because he's seen him before, but because he was told from heaven that I will give you a sign. And what was that sign? Come on, it was an indication of the presence of the Holy Spirit. Okay? Now, John had preached and preached and preached. I indeed baptize you with water, but after me there comes one who will baptize you with... Ooh, does that sound anything like the resurrection morning? Glory to glory. He will baptize you with fire. He will totally immerse you in the Spirit. Is it possible that Jesus comes at Pentecost? That's not real difficult to work out. If you have 30 days, take the 3.5 out, and you got 20. It's actually 22. And you take the 3.5 out, 23. Take the 3.5 out. It's 50 days. There is something in the count in here that could possibly bring us to the day of Pentecost. Now, I keep telling you about, you need to go back and read Joshua. You need to go back and read Joshua. We're over here. We're going to cross Jordan. We're going to get rid of Jericho. We're going to go in and start taking the land. This, and this. And they're just getting ready, and heaven sends this message. Nope. You got people here that have never been circumcised. You cannot go into the promised land uncircumcised. Tell me, I mean, this is strange stuff, but tell me what circumcision is really all about. It's cutting away the flesh. That's what happens on the resurrection morning. Yeah, it's a covenant, but what is the covenant? I will put my law on your inward parts. I will make a whole new arrangement with you. It's the promise of the Holy Spirit in fullness, which they had in the garden and lost. It's the promise of a full restoration of the Spirit. You cannot, Joshua, Bring all the men over here and all the boys over here, circumcision before you cross Jordan. All right? Now there's something in all of this language, something in all of this ceremony about getting ready to go to heaven. And Jesus said, hear me, flesh and blood cannot enter the kingdom. So we got to cut away the flesh. I cannot get past the very real possibility that Pentecost is the end of this grand event. He will baptize you with fire. He will change you from glory to glory to glory. See, I don't know. I have no perfect satisfaction in arranging these things or measuring, counting the days exactly correct. But it tells you and me plainly that no one is going to work it out until. Okay? That until has something to do with rearranging the clock. Now, I'm as sure in my own mind that things are going to move around in the sky. They're going to move, change positions. We're going to come back to 360 days. Then Daniel's visions can fit Moses' sanctuary visions and so forth. Okay? Things can work. There has to be a resetting of the clock. Now here's another one. Let's talk about the Sabbath. Is there anything in Old Testament prophetic scripture that says there will be a restoring of the old past to dwell in? Is a Sabbath in the middle of that? Absolutely. So here are the Hebrews. They're down in Egypt, under the whip. They don't even know who their forefathers were anymore. They've gone long enough and far enough and dumb enough, they don't know. They're on the way to the promised land. They haven't arrived, they're on the way. And God says through Moses and Aaron, tomorrow when they wake up, there's going to be bread on the ground. And you tell them that this is bread from heaven. And you tell them to gather it. Take a little basket, take a bowl, go gather it, but only enough for a day's portion for the family. Now they will do this for 5 days, but on the 6th day, how much will they gather? Double portion. Why are they going to do that? Because there won't be any bread the next day. Now that's strange. How does the bread know to double? But it doesn't double itself. They double it by gathering a double portion. What the bread does know is that if they gather a double portion before they're supposed to, it will rot and stink and the worms will eat it. So what is this demonstration all about? What is God doing? He's got a bunch of slaves, a bunch of folk who haven't been to school for a couple hundred years. What is God showing them? He's telling them about the Sabbath. He's introducing them to the Sabbath. Why is he doing that? Because when you get to the promised land, there will be a true Sabbath and a true God, and we'll all come together and worship the true God on the true Sabbath. And you need to know which day is the true Sabbath. And so I'm going to show you, because the bread you will gather, and every 6 days, on the 6th day, you will gather a double portion. Now let's pick that up, because the Exodus, nobody ever really got to the promised land state there. The Exodus, I won't say it's a failed experiment. I won't say it was a failed event. I won't say it was a non-event. I will say it was a not completely fulfilled event. It was a shadow. It was a type. So here we are at the end of time. And according to Old Testament prophets like Isaiah, the Sabbath is going to become an issue for how many people? It's going to become a global issue. Well, now, who would do that? Who would make everybody on the planet nervous and upset about keeping the seventh day? Moses. Well, why would Moses want to make everyone nervous? Because there's another guy telling everyone that he's changing the day. And Moses says, oh, no, you're not. Oh, no, you're not. This day belongs to God. And no man has any authority to change or touch that which belongs to God. So when Ellen White, 150 years ago, says the time is coming when the Sabbath will be a test, she's spot on. She's just 150 years off. Okay? She's spot on. The day is coming when God has to prepare the whole world to cross Jordan to the Promised Land. If Jesus rested on the Sabbath and would not come out of the tomb until, do you think He's going to come down here and wake everybody up on the Sabbath and let's have a great jamboree? No, no. He has been teaching this last generation which day is the Sabbath. And those who honor Jesus and who honor God will honor His law and His Sabbath. And the saints are going to sleep, I believe, for the Sabbath, the 49th day. I'm just telling you how I get to Pentecost, and I get there several different ways. They're going to sleep through the Sabbath. And the next day is the shout and the getting up. Now, which day does the sun and the moon stand still? The 49th day or the 50th day? Which day? Come on. Can you expand time? Can you stretch time? That's what happened on the day of Joshua. Who is Joshua? Yeah. So on the 49th day, is it possible that the sun and the moon stand still? Yeah. By the space of a whole day? And is it possible that we have all the miraculous signs and wonders and exactly the counting on the time for a Sabbath and the first day or the 50th day for a new beginning? Now you're going to have to think about this a long time. You'll be confused for a long time. Before you and I get out of this world, you will decide, I was onto something. Might not have had it all exactly correct, but there's something going on in here. Go back, do yourself the favor of reading the book of Joshua. All right? Long day, the whole business. Count the days. 10th day, they crossed Jordan. They did this, they did this, they did this. On the 14th, they did this. The circumcision on this day. And all. Go back and read the book of Joshua. Now, if I know all of this, if I finally get it all worked out, does it save me? Does it have any value at all? Yeah, it does. What's the value in it? What?
Encouragement and trust.
Encouragement? I'll buy that one. Yes. Yes.
You are aware you have your faith.
Let's do it this way. If you have read the paper, and we made sure you got a copy here today, what about prophecy? I walk you through the Bible, and I show you promise after promise after promise after promise, unfulfilled. The only promise you can point to in the Bible that has been fulfilled was the coming of Jesus as Messiah. And even that was not fulfilled the way the people were expecting it. They thought it was the great day of the Lord. The King coming. The kingdom of heaven being established. That's what they thought. So you can go all the way through and you have promise after promise after promise after promise that has not been met. Not fully, not completely. All right? Now I have been known to say this, and I shouldn't, but I'm very human. I have been known to say this. Lord, it won't do me any good on the other side. I need it now. On this side. See? Everything's hunky-dory over there. I don't need money over there. I need money now. Right? I don't need to worry about food over there. It's just hanging on all the trees, ready to drop out and drop down and all the... I need it now. Well, all of these promises appear in the setting to be on this side of the Jordan. I fully expect these grand promises to be met in the closing moments of time. I fully expect everything that is promised in the feast events, everything that is promised in the promises made to Abraham and Jacob and on and on and on. I believe these promises are going to be met. This side. And of course they will have a much larger meaning when we get to the other side. Now, if you and I come to this time, and we're talking about basically measured days, 3.5 years. Tough, really hard things. There's nothing that is painted in the Scriptures that suggests this is going to be a party at all. Okay? Now, I have basically 6,000 years of failed promises. I know they're not failed. They're just not fulfilled. I have basically 6,000 years of I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. And now here I am. I'm forced out of work. I'm forced out of food. I'm about to be forced off of my property. I'm everywhere I turn, there's trouble facing me. When do I need help? On the other side? No. I need help now. If I have the past to look at, that help can come, and when it does come, it's usually quite different than what I have imagined it or pictured it to be. Nevertheless, I can look back and say, God was in it. God was in it. God was in it. Now that's what you and I need to know about this right here. This is going to stretch your faith. I didn't say test. I don't like that. There's something about the image of God sitting in air-conditioned heaven on a glorious, high and lifted up throne and inventing tests for you and me. There's something about that just doesn't fit. So I'm not talking about testing a person's faith, but I am talking about stretching a person's faith. And I could give you all kinds of stories. All kinds of stories. I'll give you one. I went through college and a year in seminary over here across the street. And I never had even a moment, not even a moment in that time of thinking that, well, I'm not going to spend the rest of my days not being a minister. That's what I went to school for. My friends were changing their majors every 3.5 weeks. Not I. I stayed the course. And when I got into pastoral work, I suddenly said, what in the world have I gotten myself into? What in the world? And after 3 or 4 years, I decided I'm going to go back to school. I know what I'll do. I'll be a doctor. Doctors have a great life. They don't have great marriages, but they have a great life. No. So long story short, I studied for pastoral work and wound up a call porter. God saw to it that I marched backwards. That's the way most people would look at it. So when my friends in the publishing work came and said, Brother Charles, we've come to ask you to consider the publishing work, I said, you got the wrong guy. Come on, Joe, you got the wrong guy. We don't think so. We're just asking you to pray about the matter. Just pray about the matter. Just pray about the matter. Will you do that? Will you give me your word? You'll pray about the matter and ask God to show you. I did, and the Lord said, publishing work. That's what I want you to do. That was just as clear as, just crystal clear. That's what I want you to do. I had to, see, I had book learning, I had class learning, but I didn't have the practical, depend on God learning. I mean, live by faith. When you're a pastor or whatever career you may be in, you got a paycheck. When you're a call porter, depend on God. And so I learned to stretch my faith. And the Lord showed me things that it's not lawful to see. Let me give you an example. Where we live is in a rural setting, out in a country setting, in a rather rural county. And then behind us for 20, 30 miles, there's real woodsy country. And at this particular time, they had given me 6 counties to work. So anyhow, I would leave in the mornings and go to work, and I would travel some distance, and I would keep appointments, cards people find in the doctor's office, send them in, all this kind of thing. And many's the day it's been a long day. A long day. Now, when it's been a long day, what do you want to do? Go home. And I'm on this backwoodsy, it's a paved highway, but I'm on this backwoodsy road. And it's 11:45. Midnight. All right? Now, let me tell you something about Alabama. You don't knock on anybody's door at midnight in Alabama. We have what's called rednecks in Alabama. And every redneck has a shotgun. So I'm coming down this road, and I'm a good 15 minutes maximum from home. Haven't passed a car in 20 miles. I'm going home, go to bed where respectable people are at midnight. And as I'm going down this road, suddenly through the trees, I see a light, a single light through the trees. And the thought occurred to me, I never knew there was a house back there. And I've gone, and this voice says to me, go back. Just like I'm talking to you. Go back. And I said, I don't want to go back. I want to go home. Go back. Lord, this is Alabama. It's midnight. I don't want to go back. Go back. What would you do?
Go back.
It's easy to say, I'll go back. I stopped. I turned around. I went back until I could find this little narrow driveway through the trees, led to this light out through the forest I saw. And I get there. I got out of the car, got my satchel in this hand, coat and tie, the whole bit. It's midnight in backwoods, Alabama. You have to be nuts. You have to be nutso. So I knock on this door. Now the way this humble dwelling was arranged was there was one step up and supposed to be one more step up into the doorway like this, but it was a half a step and then another big step. Okay? So I'm approaching to get on the half step to reach up here and knock on the door. And when the door opens, this guy not only looked like a giant standing there, he was a giant. He was 6'4", if he was an inch. And puny little old me was down here on the ground and looking up at this guy. It's midnight. And I said, I apologize, sir. I'm sorry to knock on your door at this late hour. Okay. I said, I'm the Bible story man. I'm the guy that leaves the books in the doctor's. Honey, the Bible story man is here. She comes. Oh yeah, I wanted those books for years. So I'm in this house, and I said to this man and his wife, I said, sir, pardon me for asking, but what are you doing up at midnight? Where are you going? He said, I work the graveyard shift. I was just getting ready to leave. You can't make those kinds of appointments. You can't do it. Only God can. God knows you're going to come back in the daytime and He won't be there. This is the right time. So I showed the lady the books and I showed him the books and he said, I got to go, mister. He said, but honey, whatever you want, get it. She went in the bedroom. She came out. She brought cash for every book I had and a Bible. I completely forgot about what time it was. Do you understand what I'm telling you? We all need to see God working like that to know what the book of Acts was all about. You go to a certain street, to a certain house, and knock on the door and say, is so-and-so at this house? This is where we're going, Philip. All of this is important, not because I know exactly the day and the hour and I'm going to count 3 days until then and 3.5 until there. That's not what this is all about. What I am going to be looking for and you are going to be looking for are divine appointments. That's what these appointed moed are. They are divine appointments, and they are larger than the individual you or me. They are corporate. They are family. They are all of us. And wherever we are on this rock when this time comes, we're going to be able to know God is in it. And what will that do for us after we've seen failed promise after failed promise for 6,000 years? What is it going to do to our faith? Stretch it. Stretch it. I could tell you many of those stories. Many of them. And you know what? I never would have had a single one of them in my preacher suit. Never would. Be a totally different world. Now, we need to talk about the papacy. I believe one of the DVDs that was handed you here is an interview with Karen Hudes. Hudes. Once again, you can go online and you can get several of her interviews with various persons on radio, TV, in business, in finance, and law, and whatever. The woman is, she's worth a hearing. She has gone out of her way to point the finger at and to put the name and the blame on the Vatican. All right? Now, I had already met persons in my travels through the years who told me some of the things that I heard this woman voicing. And I said, well, she's saying the same thing that other people have told me who were in places that you would ordinarily not be present. So, Karen Huda says this. She says that there is a cabal. I don't know if that's my word or hers, but she says there's this plot to take the riches of the world and control them. Because whoever controls the riches controls what? All the people in all the world. And she said you need to understand that what the Vatican has done is develop its own intelligence service. Like we have the CIA, or the Israelis have the Mossad, or the British have the whatever, M6 or whatever. The Vatican has their own intelligence service. And their intelligence service is in control of all of the other intelligence services around the world. They control wealth beyond any other nation on the planet. Did you see that special that National Geographic presented here? They presented it again just not long ago about the treasures of the Vatican. And they took you into one vault, which was rooms and rooms and rooms and rooms of gold. It's just unbelievable. Treasures of the Vatican. Pull it up online. Look at it. You can see it on YouTube. This is what Ahab and Jezebel are all about in the prophecies. This woman that is riding the beast, she's dressed in scarlet and purple, and she has pearls, and she has gold, and she has wine, and she has all of these things to seduce and make drunk the kings of the earth. Well, what is it that they are really? Money, gold, power. And she has the gold to back up. How many? All 10 of the kings. And I believe what they're going to do in this one world order is they're going to divide the planet into 10 parts and whatever. Now, the United States is going to be in an unenviable position. And here it is. You and I have never known poverty. I'm talking about real poverty. You and I have never known. I am so fortunate to live in the history of the world at a time like this. No nation before us has ever known the wealth that we've enjoyed in this country. And with this wealth, forget about dollars and cents. It's the wealth in food. It's the wealth in travel. It's the wealth in education. It's the wealth in all kinds of things that we have been privy to that generations before us. I mean, can you imagine how many people walked and rode horses for 5,000 years to get somewhere? So I consider myself to be a very fortunate person to live at this time in the history of the world. But, you know, things have a way of leveling out. And if you got it good, you might get it bad. Just to make things even. All right? So here we are. We have never known real poverty. You and I never known real poverty in this country. And you can talk about the poor in this country all you want to. They live like millionaires compared to the poor in most of the world. This is not an argument in favor of poverty. But you and I are blessed, and this country has been blessed. And what if it all just vaporizes in a moment? What if it all just... You see, in a year's time, to keep seminar appointments, we crisscross this country. This way, that way, east and west, up and down. There are very few parts of the country we haven't seen and don't see on a fairly regular basis in a year. All right? What if I told you that I was in the backwoods of New Mexico? When I say the backwoods, I mean the backwoods. I mean desert, mountainous, no town for miles, and all of a sudden here's a railroad track, and 100 and 200 and 300 and more train cars just parked there. What would you think? What would you think? Now suppose I went to another state, 3-4 states further north, and I'm in the backwoods, listen, in an out-of-the-way place, and here's a railroad track with 3 miles of empty cars. Flat cars, box cars, gondola cars, tank cars, whatever you want. What if I told you I've seen this in 7, 8, 10 separate states from one end of this country to the other, and they hide them? Who are they hiding them from? You and from me. Why don't they want you to see them? Because you will know that this country is in the first stages of what? A depression. We're in the earliest stages of a depression. Oh, they want to call it things like recession. Baloney. Forgive me. You cannot have thousands and thousands and thousands of train cars, and I could take the pictures and show you in a state and a state and a state and over there and over here. I could tell you in Southern California, coming out of Riverside, 40, 50, maybe 60 engines of the BNSF, Burlington Northern Santa Fe, just parked. You're talking about not millions of dollars, you're talking about billions of dollars that were invested, that are invested, but they are lying idle. They are going nowhere, doing nothing. I could tell you about trains as you drive back and forth across this country, trains that come from the West Coast loaded with Chinese goods, and container after container after container, and going back with nothing to export. All empty going that way, all full coming this way. See, just common sense would tell you after a bit, hey, this party is over. It's all over but the shouting now. And I fear to tell you that the shouting is about to begin. And it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be pleasant. We're about to see some trouble in this country. Well, we went through a depression. No. In the Great Depression of the 20s and 30s, the larger percentage of the population lived on the farm. You know what they had on the farm? Food. The larger percentage of the population today lives where? In the large cities. And what they think is food grows in the supermarket. I had a good Jewish friend in high school. He moved to Mobile, Alabama from Brooklyn, New York. Jewish boy. He was 13 years old when they went on a class trip and he saw a cow for the first time. 13 years old. He didn't even know they milked cows to get milk. So what I'm trying to say to you is, if you're going to do something for your family, get on with it. If you're going to do something about hedging with a little bit of gold and silver against whatever, get on with it. Don't. This is no time for delay. If you're going to do something in the cause, you want to do something that will really count, this is the time to give. And I'm not saying give everything you got and let your family go down the drain. That's not what I'm saying at all. People call me and say, oh, Brother Wheeling, I've got $3,000 left in my savings account. Well, you better do something with it. Oh, well, I thought I'd send it. No, you're not going to send it to us. No. You've got things to do. family to take care of. So I'm making an appeal to you to take care of family. I think that's first. I don't think that's wrong. I don't think it's selfish. I don't think it's misguided. Take care of family. I like what Glenn Beck said because I had said it already myself. He said, hey, you got 3 years worth of underwear? You got 3 years worth of socks? What are you waiting on? Now, folks that live as far north as you folks live, I could say all kinds of things. I could say, if you go to Costco, Walmart, Sam's, if you go to at the right time, they have these complete cover-all things. You just zip them up, and they've got pockets, and they are insulated. And I don't care where they're made. If I can buy it on sale, I want it. I want one for me and for my family and whatever. And if I hang it up in the closet, one day when it might be a little difficult to keep the heat in the house as warm as I want it, I can not only put on those coveralls, I can sleep in them, right? I can work in them, right? Yeah. Glenn Beck says, what are you waiting for? I was a teenager. My family moved away to Mobile, Alabama from Birmingham, and I was enrolled in the Adventist school at the time. And I told my mom and dad, I don't want to move. I want to stay here and go to school. And I begged and pled with my grandmother. Grandmother, can I stay with you and Pop? And well, honey, you'll have to ask Pop whatever he says. So I went and begged Pop Chadburn. I said, Pop, I'd like to stay here. Well, costs money, to feed another mouth. And, Finally, he relented and he said, okay. So I stayed a year extra for the school year. I stayed with Pop and grandmother. And my grandmother, she was more than half blind because of retina tear and all of this kind of thing. And she was virtually stone deaf. And she was only 54 years of age. But anyhow, she said, Charlie, my boy, I've got some scraps in the kitchen. She'd keep a tomato juice can about like this. She says, I have some scraps in the kitchen, and I want you to take them out in the backyard. Now, the backyard was about 40 feet this way and about 10 feet that way. And it was a fence. That was the yard. She said, I want you to take these scraps out in the backyard and take one of my big spoons, and I'll show you where to dig a hole and where to bury the scraps. I said, okay. I thought she wanted them, so they wouldn't smell. Whatever. And so a couple of days later, she says, now I want you to go out and I want you to dig another hole beside that one. Don't dig in the same hole and bury the scraps there. So we did this for several weeks. It's wintertime. When spring came, she says, Charlie, my boy, I'm going to plant some beans out there where you buried the scraps. So she ran some strings from down here up to that fence up there, about like so, and she planted some pole beans there. Down south we love pole beans. They're real beans. We try to talk Yankees into them, but they don't know what real beans taste like. So anyhow, here I am. I'm a teenager. I've never gardened. I don't know what this is all about. And my grandmother has these beautiful, wonderful tasting green beans for most all summer long. And I did it with my own hands and her spoon. I just went out there and buried these scraps. So let me tell you, when we go home tomorrow, just out the back door, I have a 10-foot long grow bed. A grow bed. All right? And I have compost, and I put it here. And I got some cane poles, and I have 10 cane poles standing up. And that took me a few years to figure out, hey, if you will just tilt them back like this a little bit, the green beans will hang down like this. Now, if my wife is still in here, she will tell you, man, we're enjoying fantastic fresh food off of 10 feet. Now, where did I learn that? Come on.
Grandmother.
That little grandmother who years ago taught me how to bury the scraps, turn it to fertilizer, and when the summertime, a warm enough season comes to put the beans in the ground, man, not only that, we plant these rattlesnake beans and the bugs don't bother them. We plant these rattlesnake beans and they will make a full crop. A full crop means that for several weeks you can pick and eat every day. Sometimes you can pick twice in a day.
Yeah, they grow fast.
These are beautiful. And off of 10 feet we eat what we want and we give away. And then when they come, you can tell they've got some big beans on the top and they're starting to turn brown. You didn't get them and they're tilling the plant. It's time to quit producing. So I go and get my little step stool and I stand up there and I pull all those beans off and I hit these beans with fertilizer again, and guess what happens? I've got another whole crop again. See, it's nice to live down south. So when I meet people and they say, well, I don't have much ground, let me tell you, get some practical experience. Get some practical aids. Get yourself a few hand tools. Do something. Do something. So I'm going to say what Glenn Beck says. What are you waiting for? What are you doing? You've got a little time, a few bucks. Do something. Don't put it off. Don't. Now, I do not believe knowing any of this or all of this is salvation. What I do believe is it helps you to stretch your faith in God, to trust Him in what would otherwise be a desperate, full of fear matter. What are we going to do? We have no more food. What are we going to do? We have no more money. I want to tell you, as plainly as I know how, a new money scheme is coming. And it's going to be a new money scheme for America as much as for anybody on the planet. Many of these, what they refer to as developing nations, are going to see their currencies go way up. All right? And from our perspective, that's a good thing. Why is that a good thing? If their currency is higher than ours, then we have the advantage to sell at a lower price. And we have the advantage to sell them and take their currency, which has greater value, and put it in our banks and say we're asset-backed currency. Am I making any sense to you at all? So the fact that the U.S. dollar is going to do this has a good side to it, or a positive or a plus side to it, but only to a certain point. Because if our currency goes down and other countries are not desirous of buying what we're producing, and we're not producing much of anything anymore, then you and I are going to go to the stores and the food's gone up and the fuel has gone up and everything has gone up, 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 up. And we don't have currency worth enough to go, and you're following. Okay. So number one, new money is coming. And I mean very soon. I don't know if that's days, weeks, whatever. New money is coming. Now point number two is better or worse is going to follow. When I say better or worse, the new money for some people, for some currencies, is going to be a better arrangement. They're going to prosper. For some, it's going to be a sour event. I believe personally it's going to be for America a sour event. I believe it's exactly what Ellen White said. I saw this change in the circulating currency, and I was shown that it is the device of Satan for the last days. So as far as you and I are concerned, I think worseness is what is about to come our way. I believe that Nebuchadnezzar, you're the head of gold, you're the great tree. I believe Nebuchadnezzar is a stand-in for America. And 7 years are going to pass over you, and you are going to lose your mind. What an apt description of America today. You're going to lose your mind. O King, and you are going to go out and eat grass in the field with all the other donkeys. I don't know about you, but not much on grass. So I like to garden. I make sure I got a hoe and a rake and a turning fork and an axe and seed and a compost pile. You listening? And you don't have to be rich. You just got to be younger than I am. No. Every one of us can have some of this. If it's only 10 foot of grandmother on the back fence, every one of us can do something. And we should be doing it. As was pointed out, these are lost talents. These are things that were very ordinary things at a time. But those times are long gone. And folk somehow think food grows in the supermarket. It doesn't. It does not. For better or worse, things are going to change. Now, what I hope, this is at the personal level, and that's all I can do is wish for it, hope for it, and pray for it. What I hope is that there is limited prosperity. For 2 to 3 years. I need that limited prosperity so we can print as many books as possible, spread them as far as possible, as quickly as possible. And after that, you can look for me in Alaska, but I won't be there. I won't even tell you where I'm going to be. I'm praying for limited prosperity. For me, for our little ministry, for you, for anybody who's in tune with, we have a mission, we have a calling, we have a work. We have to do this. All right? And we will go as far as we can go. We will print as many books as we can print. And when the time comes that we can't go any further, then I will garden. If you don't have a mortgage and you don't have a whole lot of money, you're better off because you don't have a lot of money to pay a big mortgage. So in that sense, you're better off. The problem is always taxes. You're going to have to meet taxes. To me, this is the purpose of hedging. If we have 2 to 3 years, this is the time you want to hedge. So that just before the final, when you're required to take a number and required to do this, and by the way, I don't know that for 3.5 years you're required to take a number. I see that circumstances will be building and it will build toward that, and there will be some period of time in that 3.5 years in which you can't buy, sell, you can't whatever. So I don't know. But right now you need to be hedging. To me, a good hoe and a good rake and a good turning fork and a good shovel is hedging. That's money put into something that has a useful purpose in the days to come. I hope this makes some sense to you. Okay? I hope. There are things that people can do that most people don't really think about. And we've talked about, buckets of beans and rice or something like that and put it in. But you can take those same buckets, which, by the way, are weatherized because they have the rubber seal on them. You can get these buckets for $1 at Walmart when they finish the cake icing or whatever's in them. And wash them up, dry them out thoroughly, and what would you put in there?
Seeds.
What?
Seeds.
Seeds.
Rain.
How about socks and underwear?
I wear them.
The bugs can't get in. The moisture can't get in. You understand what I'm saying? Whereas if you just take them and shove them in a closet or a drawer somewhere, there are some very practical things that people can do. Now, I'm praying for limited prosperity. And with that limited prosperity, I'm asking God to multiply. That's what God does. We divide and subtract. God multiplies. He adds and multiplies. Okay? I'm asking God to multiply our efforts. This is a very good friend and a longtime friend, Odette Boyley. She's from the other side of that border. Okay? She came down today to spend some time. Now we met, how many years ago did we meet? 1990? Ooh, was I around then? Yeah, that's 10, 20,
24 years.
24, almost 25 years ago. That was when we were publishing, printing, and distributing The Great Controversy. In country after country, city after city. Odette said, I want to get involved in Canada. Do you remember how many books we...
Yeah, we did 350,000 Great Controversy and 1 million excerpt.
And
like
yes, I think it was called What's Behind the New World Order.
Behind the New World Order.
Yes.
Yeah, the French translation is over.
1,350,000 publications. They don't have but 400,000 people in all of Canada.
16 million in Canada for each one.
Do you believe in miracles?
Yes.
Okay. We're sitting in the office strategizing. Tony Harriman and I, we were talking.
Oh, yeah.
Tony, I've just come back from Canada, feast-keeping group, friends over in British Columbia. And I was impressed to say to these folk, we need to find somebody in Canada to help us like we did before. And how many years has it been since we talked? I got back from BC. You laugh. A lot of people call and want to know if Brother Wheeling's still alive. I'm tempted to say no. Anyhow, I'm having this conversation with Tony. And 2 days later, out of a clear blue sky, I don't believe it's a clear blue sky, I believe it's out of... Odette calls and she says, what are you going to do about Canada? And I said, Odette, here's a lady who is capable. She has already gone to the Canadian Postal Service. She has already investigated the cost of printing the books in Canada so we don't have to go through the rigmarole of crossing the border. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we have to publish how many? 19 million households? Right. If you're not hearing what she's saying, she says, I've gone to the postal authorities, I've gone to the postal service and the printer and all of that, and the cost for doing this is 6 million. And that takes care of printing and postage. I'll take your check right now. We're praying that we're going to get this done right away. I'm already making arrangements for all of the islands in the Caribbean to be every residential address on all of these islands of the Caribbean.
Puerto Rico too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Spanish, we already have Spanish. We have French now. We have English. Okay? Are you listening?
Has it already been translated?
I have people phoning me. Yes. I have people phoning me, friends from Australia and New Zealand again. Brother Wheeling, what can we do to see to it that every home in New Zealand is covered? What can we do? This is the Holy Spirit. When I hear, this is the Holy Spirit moving.
Yeah.
Bringing people together in line to accomplish the work. Now, let me ask you this. What is the value of the publication? Tell me what the value of the publication is.
Oh, it's
Can I quote Ellen White? I saw that many would take the books and they would go unread. But a time is coming when these books will be sought after and they will be taken down and they will be read, and many will trace their first convictions to the reading of these publications. Now let me ask you something. Why did they go unread? Because people are people and they're just going to put it over here. They got more to do in life than to sit around and read somebody's religious propaganda. Right? Right. That's humanity. What could possibly stir people to go looking for these books? Bad press. If you have one of these books in your house, burn it up. Do you know what that does to human beings who are evil-natured?
He wants to read it. He wants to see what's that.
Bad press. We had a politician once. He said, "I don't care what you call me, just spell my name right." I love it. That was a Louisiana politician, by the way. Look, folks. I come here one year and I come here another year and I say, we may not get back next year. I can say to you right now, if you could get on the highways and travel right now and see the vehicles that I have never seen on the highway before. We're talking about government. We're talking about new-fangled government, this and that and the other, new tags, new titles, new all of this, and the Homeland Security. It's part of this right here. Right here. So I said to the highway patrolman in Oklahoma, I said to these highway patrol men sitting in the booth in the restaurant, I said, I notice you guys are stopping a lot of people on the highway out here. Yep. I said, you probably don't want to answer me, but do you guys have something in the car that tells you what the folk have in their cars going down the road? This one highway patrolman looked at the other one. Stone cold expression, just looked at the other one. Maybe. Maybe.
What, you mean like what? Like a scanner?
I'll tell you. So I said to him, I said, I've got a little box that I invested in, and it lets me put a number in, a digital number in, and you can take any substance and get the electronic signature of that substance, and I can put it in that box, and it can tell me if some of it's going down the road. Yeah, we know about it. I said, that's what you guys are using, isn't it? Maybe. I said, I bet you really see some stuff out here on the interstate system. Now you have to understand, these are east-west interstates, all right? You have to understand drug trafficking, gun trafficking, and if you don't think there's gun trafficking going on, you're really living in the dark ages. So this one highway, he's kind of friendlied up a little bit, and he says to me, he says, right out there I stopped a couple of guys, nice car, well-dressed. He said there was just something about all of this that didn't ring exactly right. And I said, you had something in your car telling you what was in their car? No, he said, I didn't have that. But he said, I spoke to him. I said, where are you guys coming from? And the one guy said one place and the other guy said another place. Oh. Would you mind if I look in the trunk? They looked at one another and they said, no, go ahead. So he opened the trunk, they opened the trunk, and he goes back there and there's a suitcase. So he goes to this guy who's behind the wheel. He says, is that your suitcase? No, it's not mine. Is it your suitcase? No, it's not mine. Well, if it's not yours and it's not yours, you won't mind if I have a look in it, will you? He said, right out there, pointing right out on the interstate, right there. It's actually a toll road in Oklahoma, okay? I-44. He said, I opened the suitcase, $500,000 in cold cash. Now, where do you suppose that money came from? They were taking from that side of the country drugs, and they were bringing back money from that side of the country, right? Now, I can tell you what they have in the cars now. They have a device that can tell you if somebody's carrying money down the highway.
Really?
Oh, yeah. How can they know?
The old metal
They've got it in the airports.
The code on the...
If you lie on your visa thing in the airport and say, I'm not carrying but $6,000, they got a scanner that how can the scanner know how much you're carrying? The metal thread in each bill variation is according to the value of the bill. Instantaneous tells you the guy's lying through his teeth. He's got $20,000 on him. Okay? No. No place to hide. This is where we're going. No place to hide. Now, I really don't want to get into the politics of the church. I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to tell you that the reason I became personally involved in the publishing ministry is because the Lord spoke to me in no uncertain terms and said, this is what I want you to do. And that's the way this ministry began. Very humbly, very simply, this is the way it began. Now, in the 35 years, let's see, this started in 1978. 78. When this started, we became, in our little ministry, the first truly independent ministry in Adventism. Well, you can say, oh, well, there are all kinds of... No. Most of them are called, what do they call it? Supportive ministries. And they are working, if the brethren tell them don't do it, you don't do it. All right? We never learned to speak that English in Alabama. So anyhow, ASI, you know who ASI is? ASI voted us to be the first independent ministry in ASI. So we were voted in on one day and voted out on the next day. Are you listening? Well, why were we voted in? Because you're doing what we've been told to do. Why were we voted out? Because you're doing what the brethren don't want you to do. Well, why don't the brethren want you to do it? Because they want you to pay them a royalty on all of those books. I said, we can't do that. Why not, Brother Wheeling? Because these books are out of copyright. They're in public domain. And if we ever gave 1 penny, paid 1 penny, 1 cent royalty, they could take us to court and sue us for royalty on every book. We can't do it. And we're not going to do it. The Review and Herald, the Pacific Press, Southern Publishing said, Brother Wheeling, we want to print your books. We know you're printing millions of books. We're printing millions of books. We offered them to you, offered to pay you more than the worldly presses are charging us to print the books. Yeah, but the brethren told us we couldn't do business with you. I said, well, that's between you and the brethren. And as for me and my house, I'm telling you this because in all those years since 19 78 independent ministries have come and gone like, and we're still here. That's not because we're brainy. That's not because we're handsome. That's because this is what God wants done. And He has preserved us unto this day. And as long as we're alive and can take a breath and find a buck to print another book, that's what we're going to do. That's what we don't have fancy buildings. We don't have fancy offices. We wear JCPenney suits. You understand? Why? Because we have a vision. We have a calling. We have a commission. And that's what we do. And people like you have been supporting us and keeping us going through these years. And we're going through some dry times right now. Why? Because the economy is tanking. And because many of the people who have supported us through the years have gotten old. They've gotten Social Security raised. And we get the notes every day from some lovely friend who says, I wish I could send more, but I'm on Social Security now. We understand. If you're acquainted with our ministry and have been acquainted, we don't send you begging letters all the time, begging for money. Doesn't mean we don't need money. Doesn't mean we couldn't use the money. But that's not the calling. When the time comes, God touches people. Do you believe that? I know it to be a fact. When the time comes, God touches people's hearts. And people respond to the promptings of the Spirit. And that's the way it ought to be. It ought not to be. People call up, oh, Brother Wheeling, I have $7,000 and I was going to send it to the Voice of Prophecy, but I've decided to send it to you, Brother Wheeling. I said, well, why are you doing that? Weren't you impressed to send it to the Voice of Prophecy? Well, yes, but don't you need it, Brother Wheeling? Of course we need it. But if you were impressed to send it to the Voice of Prophecy, send it to the Voice of Prophecy. God's big enough to take care of
Everyone.
Yeah. It's either a faith transaction or it's not. It's just that simple. It's either you believe that God is and that He is the rewarder of them that diligently seek to do His will. Yeah. And if we do that, then we see grand and good things, and we have seen many of those things. And we'll see many more before we're through. I'm getting antsy in my, pardon me, old age. I'm getting antsy because I'm watching doors closing. When the post office shut the M-bag down, let me tell you, that was painful. That was a serious blow to our missionary-ness. We're watching these choking things. See? All right. Enough said. If you and I can take any lesson at all here, hedging means I'm going to do this because I see a time ahead when this will be of more value to me there than here. That's my hedging. All right? I expect that you and I will have this little while, and if we have something that God puts into our entrust to us, that we will meet a moment. Sooner or later, we will meet this moment, prophetic moment, in the which, hey, if I hold on to this much longer, can I really make you nervous? I don't know if I want to or not. The new legislation, I won't say where, but out of Washington. All right? What is the new legislation? It's coming. the federal government will be issuing new requirements for those who buy gold and silver. Wonder where they learned this. From the first depression. Now this new law that is going to take effect, it was supposed to be the 1st of July, but we have a little time of grace because, anyhow, every American citizen will be required to report how much gold and how much silver they have. Listen, and where it is. Under penalty of heavy fines and imprisonment. Now, who would think up such a law? Who would write up such a law?
Who would pass such a law?
Desperate Washingtonians and desperate bankers who want to take from wherever it is and lay claim to it. So I know in my heart of hearts that we have only so long that we can play this game of hide and go seek. So I'm praying exactly what I've been praying for several years. Lord, when the time comes, I don't want any money left in the bank, and I don't want any books left in the warehouse. Until then, take care of us. Get us through this. Get us over this. So, the law is very real, and the law is going to come. And all I can say to you is, if you go to the doctor and the doctor asks you if you have any guns at your house, you know what I would say? I better not say it on a camera. I would say, it's none of your so-and-so business.
Yeah, that's true. That's right.
You're a doctor. You are a physician. What business do you have asking me if I have a gun in my house? Do you know that doctors are required by federal law now to ask you that? Now, I feel like saying to Uncle Sam, whoever Sam is, I feel like saying to Uncle Sam what I would say to the doctor if he asked me if I have a gun. It's none of your business if I have gold and silver. And I'm not going to tell you if I have any or how much I have, and I'm not going to tell you where it is if I have it.
That's right.
Have I just gotten myself into trouble? Yes, but I've got people looking out, seeing the revenuers coming, and I'll get rid of it. What would I do with it? I will turn it to books as quickly as I can. And I shouldn't have told you that much. No. See, there was the little old guy. I told you about little old ladies. There was a little old guy. His name was Mordecai. And here comes Haman riding through the gate. And everybody bows down, but Mordecai, he just stands there. And Haman says, "Who's that?" "That's Mordecai." "Why didn't he bow down?" "Because he's a Jew and they keep different laws than we keep." No. See, that's what they said to Peter and the disciples. "You can no longer speak in that name." Peter said, "I'm sorry, but we ought to obey God rather than Washington, D.C. When the laws of men come to the point that they conflict with the liberties that belong to you and me from God and from our Constitution, then we need to stand up and say, no. Now you know and I know that we become marked. We're on a list and the day is coming.
But we're marked anyway.
What?
We're already marked that.
When the new currency comes, every penny that crosses your hand is followed by supercomputer. And if you go buy some gold and silver, this is why you go buy some gold and silver now. Here's the role of the papacy. The papacy is Satan's grand deception. There is no other entity on this planet that can say, we've been here for 2,000 years. And they have. There's no government that can say that. There's no organization that can say that. There's certainly no religion that can say that. Not even Islam. Judaism can say, well, we've been around, but every few years, several million of them get bumped off. This is Satan's grand strategy. If you wanted to hide, if you were up to no good and you wanted to hide, where would you hide? Church. Thank you. Church is where people are disarmed. Church is where people go because they believe God is there. Because they believe God people and God men are there. I hope you'll do yourself a favor and have a listen to Karen Hudas. No. This is where you hide. Where did the devil hide? In God's garden. Where did the devil hide? In God's house. Where's the devil hiding down here? He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now you and I are no match. We're a little bitty bunch of nobodies. We are no match for something like we're talking about here. So I'm not trying to arm wrestle with the papacy. I'm not trying to outsmart the papacy. You know, we started distributing the Great Controversy. And I got an official letter from the Vatican. And it had our name and my name on it. I did get a little nervous in the purvis, you know. I did. And they said, gentlemen, at least they called us gentlemen. Gentlemen. Would you be so kind as to send us a copy of your publication? And we did. We sent it, directed it to the Vatican, of course. Now, if you think for one moment they didn't already have 100 copies sent by 1,000 Catholics over there saying, have you seen this? Okay. You know, all of this is a formality. Do you think we're on a list?
Yeah.
Do you think we're stupid? Yes. Yes. Anybody who plays this game is stupid. Okay? Because you know where it's going to take you.
To heaven, eventually.
Well, I sure would like to get to heaven without passing go. Or whatever it is you pass. Okay? No. Right now, you need to know that the New World Order that has been conjured up was and is the idea promoted by the Vatican to the United Nations. The New World Order. It is their idea. It is their baby. The first step in this global reset, the first step in all of this is being engineered by the Vatican. And these currencies that are being printed and then used to play the shell game are going to enrich the Vatican and enrich the Federal Reserves, the Federal Reserve banks in 200 countries, in 150 countries, whatever it is. That's how this game is being played. Okay? And these are the people who are engineering it. Now, I watched all of this happen in my own day, in my own time. I watched all of this happen. President Reagan was elected in 1980. I really liked President Reagan. I'm sorry, but I did. But I knew something was going on. I knew something was going on. I'll tell you why. Because I was keeping a lot of seminar appointments on the West Coast where he was governor of California before he became president. He became president in 1980. 78, 79, 80, 81. I was keeping a lot of appointments. I was in one very large gathering there in California, and a gentleman in a, let's just call it an expensive suit, came up in the break in the afternoon and he said, I wonder if I could have a word with you. Would you just step over here? And I said, yes. And we stepped behind the curtains over on the stage. And he said, my name is so-and-so. And he said, I don't think you know this. But he said, I was standing shoulder to shoulder with Ronnie. He called Ronald Reagan Ronnie. With Ronnie when all of this went down. Now, if you don't remember when Reagan was running for the presidency, he was called a cowboy actor. They had all kinds of things to call him and try and put him down and make him look like a joke and all this kind of thing. And who was the principal opponent of Reagan within the Republican Party? Do you remember? What? No, not Ford. That's later. George Bush Sr. George Bush was not saying nice things about Ronnie. Okay? And important members of the Republican Party came in this particular gathering that this brother is standing there, shoulder to shoulder with Ronald Reagan. And they said to Ron Reagan, this is the way it is. You're going to make George Bush your vice presidential candidate, or you're not going to be the Republican Party presidential candidate. Now, I don't know how that strikes you, but all kinds of things go through my mind. I'm talking about political shenanigans and all kinds of things go through my mind. In case you don't recall, George Bush was in a job in Washington, D.C. at that time. What was his job? Head of the CIA. Ronald Reagan was voted in, which means George Bush was voted in. So how many terms did George Bush spend in Washington? 5. Count them. As vice president, 2 terms as president. His son, 2 terms. How long was this power, these power brokers, how long were they in control? 5 terms. He was voted in 1980. In 1983, Pope John Paul II was making his tour of the world, and he flew to Mexico City. It was said to be at the time the largest single gathering of human beings anywhere in history on the planet at one time, in one place. He was there. They had the cameras going. They had the crowds there. They had everything there. He had his own private jet there. As soon as he finished saying and, all the stuff they go through and do, he got on his plane. And where did you suppose he flew? He flew to Colorado. Now, when the Pope was taking off in Mexico City, President Reagan was taking off at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. And they met in Colorado. All you have to do is do a little homework. And you will find that shortly thereafter the borders came down. Shortly thereafter, a nation that could go to the moon couldn't build a fence. You will find that in 1983, President Reagan went back to Washington, D.C., all excited, and said to both houses of Congress, "This is not right. It is time for the United States of America to recognize the Holy See of Rome. And we should receive their ambassador and appoint our ambassador." Do you hear what I'm saying to you? This happened in 1983. And both houses of Congress voted yes. By the way, William Casey was now head of the CIA. And William Casey, on a regular basis thereafter, flew back and forth to Rome to meet with the Pope in private consultations and share the innermost secrets of... Yeah. All right? Now, are you aware that the highest law office in our land is the Supreme Court? Are you aware of that? How many justices or judges are there in the Supreme Court? 9. Are you aware that 7 of the 9 are Roman Catholic? Do you understand? They've already stuffed the ballot box. Well, this battle is lost. I'm not putting the books out to try and take the ground back. It ain't going to happen that way. They have the power. They got the dough, they got the people, they got the power, and they got the politicians in their pockets. All right? This is where we are. So I don't want to paint some rosy picture for any of you here and say, "Come on and join us in this grand effort that we're going to put forth." And when you get that underwear, make sure it's bulletproof. I'm serious. We need to close. I want to have a benediction with you. I'm going to ask you to stand with me, please, and I want to pray for you and your families. I want to pray for all of us that we can not only see and know what is the will of God, but have the courage to do it. Father in heaven, we thank you that you occupy the throne. You are exactly where we want you to be. We thank you that Jesus was victorious down here and that He is going to finish His mission in heaven. And He is not only going to forgive us our sins, with the authority granted Him in the judgment halls of heaven, He is going to blot out our sins. He is going to erase the record without erasing us. He's going to erase our sins without erasing our name from the book. I thank you that we are nearer today than yesterday to the great, grand, glorious morning when Christ shall appear. We know the enemy is going to fight. He is going to do anything and everything that he can do to prevent, to hurt, to stop, to hinder. But we have seen you open one door when the devil closes another. We have seen you work when no man could work. I thank you for blessing these people, for blessing each one of us. I thank you for the light and truth that has come to us as individuals, as Christians, as Adventist Christians, or members of whatever Christian faith. I thank you for the light you have shed abroad in our hearts and our lives. We need courage now. We need wisdom now. We need the help of heaven. And we do not hesitate to ask for it. I ask you to pour out your Spirit and keep your promise to turn the hearts of our children to their fathers and the fathers' hearts to the children. Bring us together so that you can take us together to heaven. I thank you for this day and all these people and all that is represented here. And I give thanks in the worthy name of Jesus. Amen and amen.